Hello and welcome to my world. Well, we're entering the final home stretch here on this modified Clod Buster, and in this video I'm going to show you the body. And in my last video I said that I didn't think that there'd be any issues putting the body together since it was pretty simple and straightforward, but as I found out with this truck, no, even the body, I ran into a few hiccups along the way, and I'll discuss those hiccups later on in the video. But let me just start out by first saying this is a standard stock Tamiya Black Edition Clod Buster body made from styrene, and I did not paint it, and that is because I am the world's worst body painter. I can do simple paint jobs on Lexan bodies because you paint those on the inside, so the clear Lexan plastic kind of covers up your bad paint job. But when it comes to these styrene bodies, I've learned from early on before I got into RC, I was into building static plastic models. And back then I learned I was not good at painting styrene bodies on the outside. And as a result, I have never tried to paint any of my Tamiya hard styrene bodies because they're not cheap. They're quite more expensive compared to regular aftermarket Lexan bodies. So that's why I've always left my Tamiya styrene bodies, the paint jobs, I've left them to the experts. And that's no exception with this. And I have always wanted to build a black Clod Buster, but I just did not have good enough painting skills to pull it off, so I never built one. So that's why I was very happy when a few years ago Tamiya came out with the Black Edition Clod Buster, which has a styrene body made from black plastic, so you don't have to paint it. And they recently reintroduced the Black Edition Clod Buster, so that's how I was able to get one of these bodies. And I did not want to mess it up, so I didn't paint it, and these bodies are not exactly what I'd call cheap. So I just left the body alone and put the decals on it. So I was very happy with the results. It kind of reminds me a lot of my old Tamiya Blackfoot body. Way back in the day, I used to have a Tamiya Blackfoot. I bought that when it first came out in 1986. And that body also was molded in black plastic, so I didn't have to paint that one. So this, aside from this one being a Chevy and the Blackfoot being a Ford, this one kind of reminds me a lot of that in the sense that I didn't have to paint it, and it was molded in black styrene, and it will not scratch or chip off. So it turned out really well, and I used the stock decals that came with the Black Edition kit, and I really like these decals a lot. I like how shiny they are. They're really sharp looking, but one major disadvantage to them that I found out is that they seem to be made from like some kind of mylar material, and as a result they don't conform well. They're not very flexible. They don't conform well to the curves and contours of the body. And that was apparent mostly right here, where these long stripe decals are divided in two. So there's one here that goes along the top of the bed, and there's this second decal that goes on the cab right here. And right here, where the cab meets the bed, that's where there's nice cut lines there, so you can cut the decals to the right length. But I had a problem with, and this is one of the weird things about this decal right here, is that there's a cutout right here that Tamiya provides for the door handle for this longer decal that goes on the cab. And a result of that cutout, you have to put it exactly in this spot. You can't move it to the left, can't move it to the right. It's got to be located right here. So Tamiya made the decal too long, and on the right hand side right here, since you can't move the decal to the left, this end of the decal right here has to wrap around the edge of the cab and go in the little space there between the bed and the cab. And I don't mind there being a break in the decal right there, so it looks like there is a real gap between the cab and the bed, like on a real Chevy truck. But the problem is that I could not get the decal to stick around the corner, just right there on the back edge of the cab. Just would not stick on there no matter what I did. And I think that might be because the curve there is a little too sharp. The radius of curvature is too sharp, and these decals being made from Mylar, they just don't conform well to the curves in the body. So to solve that, what I did was I glued it on with Gorilla Glue. And Gorilla Glue works really well. It dries clear. It sticks well to styrene, but it doesn't damage the plastic. And I've used Gorilla Glue before on the ESP lettering on the side of the King Clod. So since those stick-on letters, the gold-colored ones on that truck, they're so old, they've been on there for literally decades, the glue on one of the letters was starting to wear out. So I use just a little tiny drop of Gorilla Glue on it, and it's held on just great. Now, that was not a problem because it was on the side of the bed, so I could easily hold it down. I think I leaned, was it a pencil or a pen against it, and I let it sit like that for a day, and just the pencil or the pen leaning against it was enough to hold it in place. But the problem with Gorilla Glue is that it takes so long to dry. On the instructions say it takes 24 hours for it to dry completely. So that was an issue here, because there's no way I could hold that tiny edge of the decal down around the corner of the back of the cab like that while the Gorilla Glue was drying. And I tried everything. I tried using a hairdryer on it. I tried holding it in place with a toothpick while using the hairdryer to dry it, but I tried that for about 5 minutes, and it wouldn't stay in place because the glue just took too long to dry. So I found a little trick to hold it in place, and that was I used a simple rubber band, and this rubber band is just the perfect thickness. When I laid it in flat, I stuffed it right there in between the cab and the bed, in that crack right there, and that width of that rubber band is just perfect to stuff in there with a toothpick. I use a toothpick to just shove it in there, and that was just the right width to apply pressure on that decal, and it held the decal in place right back there while the Gorilla Glue was drying overnight, and it worked great. The next day, after about 24 hours, I pulled off the rubber band, and the decal has stayed in place ever since, so it works great. So I only had that problem on the left side of the cab. I didn't have it on the right side, thank goodness. So, strange thing, just using an old rubber band that I had just lying around. That worked absolutely perfect to hold that decal in place while the Gorilla Glue was drying. And I also, while talking about that decal, I have to thank one of my viewers out there, Kenny. He showed this on his Black Edition Clod Buster, and I thought it was such a great idea, and he showed how you can push in the decal here, right there, and right there, where there's lines in the body around the door and around the tilt hood. And I just pushed it in with a simple toothpick, and it just makes it look so much nicer. So thank you, Kenny, for the tip. That worked real good, and I like the way it looks. The only other problem I had with these decals was down here on this long skinny decal that goes on the rocker panel. And it's kind of weird. Tamiya, if you put the decals on the way Tamiya says to do it in the instructions, they just have one long decal here. And you're supposed to just bridge it over the gap between the bed and the cab. And I didn't like the way that looked, so I wanted to kind of mimic the same look that the top decal has right here with a cut in it. So I cut my decal down here. Normally it's just one long piece. I cut it right there. So now mine is now two pieces. But the problem with doing that is that originally this decal is spaced just right. If you don't cut it, it's spaced just right so that it will fit between the fender flares right there on the front and then right there on the rear fender. And it's nice, and the body's nice and flat, so it can conform just fine to where those fender flares kind of bulge out a little. But since I cut my decal and that spaced it out just a tiny bit. As a result, the right end of the decal right there kind of goes on the fender flare a little bit on the rear wheel well, and then the decal on the front portion right there kind of also is applied on the wheel, the fender flare, just a little bit on the front wheel well. So as a result of that, I had a problem with the lower corners of the decal right there and right there sticking. So I had that problem with on both sides of the cab, both sides of the body. So there are 4 points right by the rear and the front fenders on this body that I couldn't get that lower decal to stick properly. So it was too small of it sticking up to where I couldn't put any Gorilla Glue on it like what I did with the cab, the long stripe decal right here. So what I did instead was I basically peeled up about 1/2 inch of the decal on this side and 1/2 inch of the decal on that side, and I did my best to try to bend them, curve them upward. Not much, maybe about 1/2 millimeter total. And so that way it moved it onto a more flatter portion of the body, so it didn't curl up right there and right there. And it worked really well, but if you look closely, you might be able to see it. I'm not sure if this is showing up on camera, but it does kind of curve up a little tiny bit right there on the left. It's not perfectly straight, and it curves up a little bit right there too. I don't know if you can tell, but I can because I put them on there. But not noticeable from a distance, but if you look really close, put your nose up there, you can see it. And oh, one other thing too is that regarding putting the Gorilla Glue here on this decal, that only needs to be done, at least on my body, it only needed to be done on this front decal. It didn't need to be done on the rear decal because that one is not locked into position by any cutouts or any door handles or anything like that. So this one, you can position it just a little bit further back, so that way the front edge of that decal is nowhere near that, doesn't have to wrap around the edge of the bed right there like it does on the cab. So that worked out real well. So those are some of the issues that I had with these decals. Oh, and that was the issues with applying the decals. Now, the other issue I had, and this is not with applying them, but it was with cutting out the decals. And these decals, one of the things I love about them is that they're so shiny and they reflect all the light. They look great, especially in the sun. But also, that's one of the things that's a real pain about cutting them out. Because they are so shiny, I had a hard time seeing the cut lines around all of the decals because it's like trying to look into a mirror. All the light was just being reflected straight back into my eyes. So I wanted to wear sunglasses when I was cutting these out. It was that blinding. And Tamiya does provide black cut lines around all of them. So it's not as though you don't know where to cut. It's just the issue is that they're so reflective. You can't see those black cut lines. So I found the easiest way, now it was not perfect, but the least painful way to cut these out was my son has a really cool LED desk lamp and it has an adjustable light output. So I found that cutting out the decals under that desk lamp with the light output decreased. So just turned it way down and basically minimized the amount of light coming from the lamp, and thus that minimized the amount of light being reflected back into my eyes from the decal. And that made a big difference, and that allowed me to cut the decals right on that black cut line that Tamiya provides. Now, using the lower output lamp was not perfect. It still was way harder to cut these decals out compared to just about any other decal sheet I've ever had to deal with. But it did make it a lot easier compared to cutting it out under a normal powered lamp or desk light or overhead ceiling light or anything like that. So maybe if you have one of these black Clod Busters, try cutting out the decals with sunglasses on like I suggested. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I never tried that. I just used the desk lamp method and that seemed to work okay. But that's just something I never thought about when I first bought this body and bought these decals. I just saw the finish, what they look like when it was done. I said, oh, that's cool. I never thought about getting blinded by how shiny these things are. But all the decals went on okay. If you have one of these bodies and you're gonna put the decals on, it's tricky, like I said, because they don't stretch, they don't conform well. It's hard to stretch them to fit around contours of the body and stuff like that. But if you feel bad about your decal job, just do what I did and go to Tamiya's website and look at the pictures they have of the hood of the Black Edition Clod Buster there. And on the hood decals, the ones that go around the hood scoop, on one of them, I think it's this one right here, right around this area right here, on the official Tamiya website, they have a gigantic, ugly ripple in the, I'm pretty sure it's this decal here, right along here, right in front of the hood scoop. And it's huge. It sticks out like a sore thumb. But if you're not happy with your decal job and your Black Edition Clod Buster, just go to Tamiya's website, take a look at those photos, and it just shows you how hard these decals are to put on, because the guys that are paid to do that and the professionals at Tamiya, they can't even get them on straight to look perfect. So, so anyways, there's some parts of my decal job that, like I said, I had to curve up the decals on the rocker panels. I was not too happy with that. But then I took one look at the pictures of the decals on the Tamiya website, and I thought, okay, makes mine look so much better. I'm perfectly fine with the job that I did now, okay? So take a look at those. That one photo is pretty funny. There's a huge ripple. It's like right along there. So these decals are not easy, but I got them all on there, and I'm happy with the end result. And on the rear, I got a little bit more creative, and I added some lettering there. So it has this slogan there: if you can't stop, smile as you go under. And those are decals from an Autographics sign and lettering kit. I don't think they make it anymore, but that slogan is kind of a little throwback to the 1980s heyday of lifted trucks. And that was a slogan you saw on tailgates and bumper stickers and license plate frames of a lot of lifted 4x4s, both in my area, and I used to see a lot of trucks in the 4x4 magazines that had that slogan. And I put it on the back of my very first Clod Buster in 1987, using the same Autographics lettering and sign kit, except that one, because that was a white body, that one had black letters on it and not the gold ones like you see here. But that slogan, I had no idea where it came from, but it actually, I recently found out it's the name of a song. So you can look it up here on YouTube. It's actually there. So I had no idea that they were actually the name and lyrics from a song. But that's where it came from. I thought it was just some saying that four-wheelers came up with, and I always liked it. So, but no, it's actually an official song title and song lyric. Down in the middle of the tailgate, I decided to break up the dark. There's a little bit too much black on the back tailgate here, so I put this mirrored decal here, and that was made from an Autographics chrome decal set. Autographics used to sell this sheets of just reflective chrome decal material, and you can just cut it out in any shape you want. And I had some of that stuff left over from back in the day, so I just cut it out and stuck it on there. And also the license plates, both on the rear and the front. Those are from a seller on eBay, and he sold those. And you could have any lettering that you want on it. And he sells them with all kinds of different states on them, and I chose the California one. And that is the California Golden State, the white decals. And they only made those, I think, for only 1 year, in 1984. And I have always loved those license plates because my dad's truck, which is a Nissan 720 that he bought brand new in 1984, his license plates were those right there, those white ones, just like that. And I've always loved those. And that 720 truck actually became my first vehicle back when I got my driver's license. So I've always loved those. I still have those original plates. The truck is long gone, but I took the plates off and I wanted to reissue them to my new car, but the state of California, the DMV, wouldn't let me. And we have a weird rule in this state that you can only reissue old license plates if they are custom vanity plates. So, which that one was not, and they, for some reason, they won't let you reissue an old plate to a new car if it's just a regular plate with the regular letters and numbers on it, not a custom vanity plate. So as a result, I still have those license plates, but they're sitting on my garage wall. right now, so use them as decoration. But I've always loved those. State of California only issued those for 1 year, I believe, in 1984, and they never issued them again. So it's kind of a shame. That rear bumper, that is a machined aluminum bumper from Chatham CNC. And it is kind of a replica of the stock Tamiya bumper. And it looks great with matching Chatham CNC bumper on the front too. And the Chatham bumper, you notice I also have license plate on the front too, the custom California plate on the front. And I was able to stick that on there because the Chatham CNC bumper, although the shape is similar to the worn bumper that's on the stock Tamiya Clod Buster, but the Chatham one does not have the roller fair lead for a winch like the Tamiya one does. And these, to me, I believe these were replicas. The Tamiya one is a replica of a worn bumper made by Warren, the winch company. I think so, but I'm not positive. One of the things I love about the Chatham CNC front bumper is that it can be mounted either on the frame like the stock Tamiya bumper, or it can be mounted to the body like what I have here. And all the other aftermarket Clod Buster front bumpers that I have seen on the market, they only mount to the frame. And that's a problem because this Crawford Time Warp chassis that I have, it does not have any bumper mounts at all on it. There's no way to mount the bumper on the frame of the Time Warp chassis like on the stock Tamiya chassis, unless you design and manufacture some kind of custom front bumper mount. So that's one of the main reasons why I bought the Chatham CNC front bumper. It just bolts to the plastic panel underneath the grill. You have to drill 2 holes for the 3mm screws. Now there is one main disadvantage to mounting it this way though, and that is that black panel under the grill does not sit completely vertical. It's kind of angled a little bit, so as a result the bumper, the Chatham CNC bumper, kind of hangs down a little bit. It doesn't sit perfectly straight like the stock Tamiya one does. So it looks like, because it's mounted on that panel at an angle, it looks like a big, huge guy jumped on the bumper right here and bent it downward a little bit. So it's kind of annoying, but there's really nothing else I can do to prevent that because it's mounted to the panel and the panel's at an angle. Chatham does provide a little 3D printed plastic spacer back here, so that allows the bumper to mount flush onto the panel, but that spacer right there does not prevent the bumper from pointing downward a little bit. So it's a little annoying, but it's okay. I can live with it. You'll also notice that I have a Clod Buster grill that does not have the giant 4x4x4 logo on it like most Super Clod Busters do. And I've never been a big fan of that grill. The 4x4x4 logo is just way too big for my taste. So this grill right here is a circa 1990s era Clod Buster that my brother gave to me. So it's in really good shape, has hardly any scratches on it, so I decided to dust it off and use it on this truck. And aside from the missing Chevy bow tie grill right there, it looks just like the front grille that you'd see on a custom deluxe Chevy square body Chevy pickup truck. And I'm pretty sure the grille is from on a Clod Buster is from a custom deluxe, by the way, because it only has 2 headlights. The more expensive model Chevy square bodies like the Silverado and the Scottsdales, they have, and the Cheyennes, they have 4 headlights, whereas the custom deluxe, I believe, was the only trim package that only had 2 headlights. And right here, that hood scoop is from Arch Manufacturing, and it's a machined aluminum one. And this is just the basic one that has a machine finish and no logos. So Arch allows you to buy these with either machine or polish finish, and you can also get them engraved with like a Chevy logo or Ford logo right here. But I just bought the basic, most simple one and bought a machine finish. That way it matches all the Chatham CNC bumpers on this body. And it fits perfectly, just like the stock Tamiya hood scoop. Now on the bed is a Chatham CNC double tube roll bar, and this is a replica. To use a watch collector's terminology, it would be called an homage to the ESP double tube machined aluminum roll bar. And it looks almost the same, almost identical, but there's a few improvements. One of the easiest ways to tell the Chatham one from the ESP one is that the Chatham one, all the edges are chamfered on the side plates right here. So every single edge has a nice chamfered edge, so it's nice and smooth. The ESP one the edges are sharp right there. And also Chatham did a really nice job on this. They give this option. The down tubes right here can be mounted to the bed. So the ESP one, these down tubes right here are actually tapped with 3mm thread in there, on both of them, that one too. And you can actually mount the down tubes to the bed floor with 3mm screws. So you just have to drill holes in the bed to mount those, and I did do that. So it's kind of optional. You don't have to do that. The other way they secure it is just with screws right here, just like on the stock Tamiya roll bar. But if you want extra security and don't want the roll bar like rattling around against the top of the bed here, you can drill some holes in the bed and use 3mm screws right there to secure it in place, lock it in place nicely. And I did do that with mine. And I also have an option for this roll bar is the Chatham roll bar that is a tube that is drilled with 4 holes to mount off-road lights on there. And so this is a separate part that you do have to buy from Chatham CNC. I wish it could mount 5 lights like the ESP one that is on the King Clod. That would be a nice to have. Not a huge deal because I have the ESP one that has 5 lights on it on the King Clod. But it would be kind of nice if this truck also had 5 lights like the stock Tamiya roll bar. And incidentally speaking, roll bars, Chatham CNC also makes a quad tube roll bar like the one that's on the King Clod that was made by ESP for a short time. But that one also, the Chatham version also of the quad roll bar also has chamfered edges around the side pieces like this. It's really nice. So you can easily tell it from the ESP one. But I thought about getting one of those also for this truck, but one of my main goals when I built this truck is I wanted it to look different than the ESP King Clod. So that's why, and the King Clod has the original ESP quad roll bar on it, quad tube roll bar on it. So I figured keep them different. So that's why I bought this one, the double tube one instead. And that's why I'm not too upset that this has only 4 lights on it, unlike the King Clod that has 5. But it's not a huge deal since it looks different. The 4 lights on top, these are from Ram. They're made out of machined aluminum. And this was one of the biggest problems I had when I put this body together. And that was that the light bulb in this light was burned out from Ram. And Ram's literature that they provide with their products, and also says on their website, they talk about how their light bulbs they last so many thousands of hours. Well, guess what? I was the lucky guy who got the one Ram light bulb that lasted 0 hours and it was burned out from the factory. So the other 3 work fine, just perfect, no issues whatsoever. So it was just this one that was burned out. So I tried to call Ram to try to get a new light bulb. Maybe they'd replace it under warranty was my thinking, but I couldn't get through. The phone number that was on their website that I dialed, it was answered by an automatic computerized telephone operator, and the recording told me that the number had been changed and that the new number was unknown. So that kind of got me a little concerned. So then I did a little searching online and I found the Yelp review page for Ram electronic devices, and a reviewer in there had posted that Ram had closed and gone out of business. a few months ago. So unfortunately, that means that RAM is now gone. Like so many other great RC aftermarket parts manufacturers, RAM is now long gone. So there is no company that I know of. If anybody knows, please leave a comment below. There's no company that makes nice machined aluminum off-road lights like this. So there's places you can get ones that are made out of plastic, but if you've got an aluminum roll bar and aluminum bumpers on your truck like I have here, I would not want to put plastic lights on. It just would not look good. So that's just my opinion. But so now that RAM is long gone, I couldn't get a light bulb for it. And in the future, like I said, if Chatham CNC does answer my prayers and does make a light bar roll bar tube that can accommodate for 5 RAM lights, guess what? I can't get another one unless I go on the secondary market, and people are charging an arm and a leg for these things on the secondary places like eBay. So I'm glad I got 4 brand new ones when I did, but you can't get them anymore, at least not from RAM directly. So that's one thing to keep in mind. When I did my first video about the parts I bought for this truck, I mentioned that you can call RAM and get more of these lights, but that's not true anymore. RAM is now gone. So since RAM was out of business, that kind of left me stuck with having to fix this burned out light bulb myself. So I never tore apart any of these RAM off-road lights before, so I had no idea how they worked or anything like that, but this was the light bulb that was in there, the one on the left. It's a 3mm 9-volt light bulb. It's 3 millimeters in diameter, I should say. And I managed to scrounge around online and I found these replacement ones there on the right. Those are also 3 millimeters in diameter and 9 volts and 80 milliamps is their rating. And they come with these ultra thin wire leads. So I was hoping that inside the light bulb, or inside the light housing, that there would be some kind of socket in here that the light bulb would just plug into after I cut those leads down a little bit, but unfortunately, no. The RAM light bulbs are hardwired with these black and white wires. And one of the things I love about these RAM lights is that the wires go through the mounting stud down here. So this mounting stud is hollow and the wire goes, that black and white wire goes up down through the middle to the light bulb there. And a lot of off-road lights that I've seen, the plastic ones, have the wires come out through the back of the housing, so it doesn't look as nice. So one of the things I've always loved about these RAM ones is that they look really clean and they kind of conceal the wires really well. But the problem is that they are hardwired to these black and white wires right here. So there's no socket in here. So what I had to do is I had to first remove the clear plastic lens from the light housing, and I did that using some duct tape, and I just stuck it on the front of the plastic here and quickly ripped it off, and that pulled out the plastic clear lens. That pulled it out pretty easily. And then I pulled the light bulb upward, or I think I pushed it. I pushed these wires up through the mounting stem right there, and pushed the light bulb out vertically. And that's when I saw that it was not a socket, it was actually hardwired. And I cut off the old light bulb, and then I soldered those black and white wires to these super thin leads right here. And I cut the leads really short, and then I just soldered them to the wires. And my main concern, that was pretty easy, but my main concern was stuffing the solder joints for both wires plus the black and white wires back down into the stem. So the inner diameter of that vertical black stem right there, it's not very large in diameter. It's not much larger than the black and white wires there when they're twisted together like that. So that was my main concern. And if those two wires, those two solder joints touch together, of course you've got a short circuit and bad news. So definitely don't want that. So They did fit. I kind of test fitted them before connecting the batteries and stuff like that, so they did fit inside there, inside that mounting stem without any problem. But I could not use any heat shrink tubing on the exposed wires of the solder joints because it was too thick. So even the thinnest heat shrink tubing that I have, which is paper thin, I don't think it would fit, since you have to solder, you have to put the heat shrink tubing around the black wire and the white wire. So you have heat shrink tubing around both of those. You got to stuff all that down inside that stem right there, and I don't think they would all fit in there. So what I did, instead of using heat shrink tubing to insulate the solder and the wire joints, I used this stuff right here. This is liquid electrical tape. It's made by Gardner Bender, and I've used this around the house. I remember using it on some wires on my air conditioner unit outside one time, and it worked really well. And there's the manufacturer, Gardner Bender. Bought this from the local hardware store, and it works great for places where you don't have access to put on heat shrink tubing. So, and also if you need something thinner than heat shrink tubing, you can just put a thin coating of this liquid electrical tape on wires, and it works great for insulating the wires. So that's what I did. I didn't use the brush. There's a brush under the cap, a big fat thing. But instead of using that, I used a toothpick. So I used the toothpick and put the liquid electrical tape on it, and then I very carefully put a thin coat of that liquid electrical tape between the two solder joints and on all of the exposed wire and on these exposed leads. And very thin coat of it. Just enough to stop any bare wires or bare solder from touching each other and causing a short circuit. So I let that dry overnight, kept my fingers crossed, and I pulled everything back in using the black and white wires down here on the bottom of the stem. I pulled the new bulb into the vertical stem and kept my fingers crossed, said a little prayer, turned on the power, and everything worked. So I was very happy that these light bulbs fit perfectly. They're the exact same size as the original Ram light bulbs. It didn't cause any short circuits, no fires, no fireworks shows, nothing like that. It worked great. There is one disadvantage though, and it might be a major one, and that is that, let me turn them on here. Can you guess which one I replaced just by looking at the brightness? So I don't know if it's coming through on camera, but it's really obvious when I look at it. So in case you can't tell, the new light bulb is on the far right. All the other three are the original Ram light bulbs. So that is one disadvantage. These bulbs that I bought are not as bright as the original Ram ones, but at least they work. Okay, it's a lot brighter now compared to when the bulb was burned out, okay? So, and I was very happy when it works, and there was no short circuits or anything. But these new light bulbs I bought, they came in a pack of 30. So they should last me forever. So if any light bulbs on this truck or on the ESP King Clod burn out, the ESP King Clod also has Ram off-road lights on it. I'll have plenty of these light bulbs to replace, and I now know how to do it. So it's not that difficult, and I know exactly what's involved. So that was the main issue, was just I was a little concerned, a little scared about what was inside these things and how they're put together, but it's not bad. And as I said before, although these are not as bright as the Ram light bulb, it's way brighter than that black burned out bulb there on the left. So I was very happy with how everything turned out, and it worked okay. So let me show you the underside of this body, what's inside here. And in case you're wondering what's underneath or inside the King Clod's body, it's basically this. I copied everything that I did on the King Clod, because that body had the lights in it, but it didn't have the headlights, and it did not have any battery power to the lights, so nothing was hooked up. So basically everything that I did on that truck, I just copied it what I did on this truck here. So the lights are powered by this 6 AA battery holder that I bought from Amazon, And I really like this one because it has an integrated on-off switch back here. So it's got a little slide switch right there. It works really good. Just reach in the fender and turn it on like that. And then everything lights up. So it's easy to reach. One difference on this truck compared to the King Clod is that I did mount the battery holder further forward, and that was because I didn't want it to interfere with the ESC cooling fan. So that Novak cooling fan is right around here on the chassis, and I didn't want the battery holder to hit the fan or block off airflow to the fan in any way. So that's why I moved it a little bit further compared to on the ESP King Clod. The King Clod, it does not have a cooling fan on its speed controller. And this was another problem. So I had two problems when putting this body together. One was with the RAM light bulb burned out, had to replace that. The other one was with the on-off switch on this battery holder. So it's a simple slide switch, but when they manufactured the switch, they didn't put it together correctly, and it was not put together tight enough. It's kind of crimped together, and as a result of not crimping it together snug enough, the contacts weren't making a connection very well. So I just took a pair of very small needle nose pliers and I crimped the top portion of the switch, which is made out of metal, onto the bottom PC board of the switch, and just kind of cleared up any loose tolerances in there, and it works great now. So now it's just perfect. It slides and makes a perfect connection every time. But when I first got it, it would only turn on when I pushed down on the slide switch with my finger. Just pushed it down inward, and then made a connection. So as soon as I let go of it, then the lights would turn off. So just crimped it with a simple pair of needle nose pliers, and now it works perfect every time. So I secured this to the underside of the bed with servo tape, and all of the wiring is basically just bundled together. I didn't want to cut any wires in case I needed to change more light bulbs on any of the off-road lights, so I just left the wires really long and I just bundled them together on this underneath the sunroof right here with one of these zip tie holders down there. And the headlights are one of those old Tamiya incandescent headlight kits. So I had a few of those just lying around, so I decided to use those in here. And I could have used LEDs like people are using now, but I like how these have, this Tamiya light kit has these nice aluminum plates you can use to secure the light bulbs in here. So if I ever need to replace it, I can just simply unscrew these plates and take out the burned out light bulbs and replace it with another kit. So nice and fast and easy. So, and also if you look in here, you can see the two screws that I had to drill in that front panel to mount the Chatham CNC front bumper. So there's one there and one there. So I just had to drill those through. And also, oh, while we're on that, here's the holes that I had to drill to mount the Chatham CNC double tube bed bar too. So I just had to drill those right there. Not a problem. And the last thing that I did was I plugged the original antenna hole in the body with one of these black nylon hole plugs, and I bought that from my local hardware store, and that was a 3/16 inch diameter hole plug. So it fits in there perfectly diameter wise, but the bed of the floor is too thick for the little locking tabs on the hole plug to lock it and hold it in place. So I basically just glued it on with some Gorilla Glue on the underside of the bed. So it's not perfectly flat, it kind of bumps up a little bit like a mushroom, but I think it looks better than having the big hole there instead. So those are the modifications that I did to this Black Edition Clod Buster body. And as you can see, there were some issues that came up along the way with the on-off switch and with the burned out light bulb. But aside from that, everything went together without too much of a hitch, and took a while, especially applying the decals. I think the decals on the tailgate alone, I think those took me about 2 hours to apply, because all of those individual letters on the autographic sign kit, they all have to be cut out individually and placed. positioned just right, and they're also at an angle. They're not perfectly vertical, so you got to get that angle right so that they look right and everything. But I'm very happy with the end result. This body looks great, and I'm hoping that it will fit on the chassis nice and smoothly, no issues whatsoever with that. But with this truck, you never know. So that's basically all I have to do right now, because I literally just finished this body just today. So I haven't had a chance to try it out on the chassis as of this filming. So I'm going to mount it on the body, and I'm going to show you that in my next video. So I'll show you this truck, what it looks like when it's all completed. So please stay tuned for that. And oh, also, before I forget, I have finally decided on a name for this truck. So after thinking about it and making several candidates, I finally narrowed it down to one. So, but I will hold off on that. I will announce that in the next video when I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for the next one, and I'll catch you on the next video.